Okay, let's do it.
Good morning, world, and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Today is June 21st, and we are now officially in summer. And just in case you don't believe me, if you're living anywhere between California and Texas, just step outside your door and you'll find out how summery it really is. Huge heat wave happening across the west and the southwest, with temperatures going upwards of 115 degrees. I believe in Phoenix they'll be getting close to 120. So if you're out there, if you're living out there in those areas, please take care of yourself, stay hydrated, and don't overtax yourself. It's not a good time to expose yourself to any intense and extreme climate. Speaking of taking care of oneself and extreme conditions, I was listening to a 10-minute interview last night with Jim Marrs, and I just want to, I don't know Jim Marrs, but I've followed his stuff for years. A lot of people have. He's, Jim's one of these guys that writes about everything. He'll write about Atlantis. He'll write about the Illuminati. He'll write about whatever. I mean, he's a very smart guy. He's a Texan, and he's been on this path, this truth path, for quite a long time. He got really sick, and he's had a kidney failure. So that was a big deal. He's been on dialysis, and then he lost the use of his right eye. Apparently, a piece of plaque from the kidney was knocked loose during dialysis, and it went right behind his right eye. Somehow it got into the aorta, and it didn't go to his brain. It didn't go to his heart, but it went to a position right behind his right eye, and he's lost sight of his right eye. Strangely kind of illuminated in terms of its symbolism, and he sounded okay, but I think Jim's got some challenges ahead of him. So I've never met you, Jim. You're a bit controversial. There's some people who claim that you're kind of, sort of on one side, but I mean, nobody's clean, right? There's always like, oh, he's a shill, and look, take the word for what it is, figure out what you can extract out of it, and just don't sign up to worship at the club. That's all you've got to do. I mean, the problem has always been the cult of personality. And sometimes, look, it's easy to get swept up in the cult of personality. It happens. Because in order to deliver a message, you've got to have some juice, right? Some sizzle, some snap, crackle, pop, and charisma on some level, unless, of course, you're Eckhart Tolle, in which case you left your personality on a park bench somewhere in Germany, and it paid off for you. Congratulations, Eckhart Tolle. And this is a great career move, great pivot. You know what I'm saying, though. Anyway, take what you can, sift through it, and try not to get too attached to the messenger. Anyway, I hope Jim gets well, because, anytime somebody in this line of work gets really sick, we'll lose someone. And he's actually provided a lot of really valuable information. And I'd like to also, just while I'm on kind of this role here, just send a shout out to my good friend Jolie over in Chicago, the Chicago area. And some of you have known Jolie as a guest on my show over the years. She's a psychic, and she's actually a really good psychic. She's a bit eccentric, but she's certainly generous with her time, and she's certainly generous in terms of what she charges for her services. She's just getting out of the hospital today and she had diverticulitis. I don't know what that is. I should have looked it up. But I hope she gets better fast. And when she does, you should check her out and work with her on the intuitive tip. She's a friend of mine on Facebook, Jolie Evans. Treat yourself to a reading with her. You won't regret it. All right, we got that out of the way. What's going on out there? It's another crazy day in the Matrix. How's the sound today, by the way? I made a few adjustments, a few tweaks. I hope it's punching and popping and you can hear the enthusiasm for me being behind the mic. So there's a couple of things that we're going to go over today. By the way, I just want to thank the people over on YouTube who are adding really substantial comments to some of the stuff that I've been putting out. Especially I want to give a tip to Chris Houston, who also does some astrological stuff. And anytime he adds his comments to the discussion, it really sort of buffs things out. There's a whole host of you, and thank you for participating and putting your 2 cents, putting your little bow on this broadcast every day. It means a lot, and it adds to things. So, of course, we're still talking about what's happening with Syria and the shooting down of the Syrian jet. I mean, think about this. What if an American jet fighter got shot down? Holy shit, right? You would have these guys in Capitol Hill doing war dances, painting their faces, doing whatever they do, eating pizza, eating war pizza. Pun slightly not intended. But, we're at a very precarious point. I don't think we're going to get into World War III. That's not happening because there's too much on the table economically, even for Russia. I mean, Russia has had a huge amount of restraint because they want to continue to buttress their resources and try to make sure that they've got gas and they've got oil and they've got secure pipelines and are building alliances behind the scenes. So I'm not sure they're willing to do anything. So the U.S. will take its pointed stick and continue to poke it at Russia, and Russia will continue to have some level of restraint while it quietly on the other side does whatever it does, builds whatever it builds, and needs to do. And I've already said that if they were waging some kind of psychological war against the United States, which in all likelihood is very, very possible, they're completely winning because of this massive divide and conquer issue about Russia inserting itself into the elections of the United States and really dividing the country in a huge way. And I've seen really intelligent people think that, Putin was involved and there was this and there was that. Crazy stuff. By the way, what's happening with Reality Winner, the young woman, the young whistleblower, theoretically, who got the goods? Again, what happens? She got basically popped during the sign of Gemini, right? And she was working for the NSA. Hello? Who else was working for the NSA? It was Edward Snowden. So here you have the masculine and the feminine in the month of Gemini. You have the twin effect. Yeah. What's happening with her, though? I mean, we saw the whistleblowing, and it was a blip. And is she incarcerated? She might be. Is she living in Tierra del Fuego? I don't know. But it's another kind of memory hole piece. And there's a lot of memory hole pieces. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about what happened in Atlanta about 6 weeks ago, almost 2 months ago. Do you remember the big fire on the freeway and then the young woman, the lawyer, getting shot with the videotape? I mean, the guy walking away. I mean, what happened there? And there was some other high strange that took place in Atlanta right after that. Down the memory hole. And we have these strange events, and we look at them, and then we're moving on. It's on to the next one, and on to the next one. The Philando Castile verdict came out, and the videotape came out. Wow. All I can say is we better look. It's terrible. The guy was trying to tell the officer that he was carrying a weapon. And he was, he had to carry conceal He had a carry conceal license. And then the cop went batshit on him. And then the cop got off. And that's a miscarriage of justice. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And I hope that they have a civil suit, and I hope they sue the shit out of the cop. Because the videotape shows somebody who's very compliant. And it's unfortunate because now it's adding to this narrative, and this took place last year in that wave of events over the last 2 years, some of which were completely pumped with social steroids so as to be politicized in a very Saul Alinsky-like fashion to divide and conquer. We haven't had a lot of these, and I hope we have less and less and less, but unfortunately it feels as though things are heating up and on the rise. 2 events recently occurred. One in New York City where a man was riding a bicycle. This is a guy, he was, not from this country. He was an immigrant. I believe he was either from Mexico or Ecuador. He was not from the United States. And this guy's a fruit seller. Let me see if I can find the story here. Let's see if I can do this. Hold on. Give me just 1 second here. I'll get it. Yeah, so he's a father of 2. And he's 38 years old. And he's in a coma. This guy's in a coma. His name is Domingo Tapia. And he was riding his bike in Bed-Stuy. And it's about 1:30 in the morning. So the guy was coming home from work. And somebody, and they've got video on this, and this guy punches him just out of the blue, and punches him, and he hits the ground, and he's been in a coma ever since. He's got 2 kids. This is rough. This is a rough story. His wife is named Esther Diaz. She says that her husband of 13 years is unresponsive. She said she had tried to ask him what happened, but he has yet to wake up and explain. Their children, just 5 and 7 years old, are left wondering where their father has been, and he is the breadwinner of the family. This is the unfortunate social climate that has been generated. It is a cauldron of hate, and we really need to assess this on a lot of different levels. It's a very, very unfortunate event. On the other side of the spectrum, well, connected to this is from 2 days ago down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. There's a huge gang of mostly young blacks, young black Americans. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be straight up here. And they were basically roaming. Now, you watch the video, not everybody there is black American. There's some dipshits who are videotaping the thing, but there's a huge gang moving through Myrtle Beach, and they wind up, getting completely riled up. Cops are called in to sort of disperse them, and gunshots are fired, and cops are down. So these are 2 events that are just blipping on the radar that from an aggression standpoint we need to be aware of. Because we are entering this long, hot summer, and we had some of this last summer, and it looks like it could be ramped up again, especially last summer we were in the election cycle, and now we're post-election, but we're in this phase where this cauldron of hate, it's like this 15 minutes of hate. This, in Orwell 1984, Trump has become the face of hate, and people spend, I think, a large amount of time actually directing huge amounts of negative energy in his direction. And if what's her name, Lana Del Rey and her buddies are still doing these rituals on Trump, it might be having some kind of effect, and maybe a different kind of effect that they thought they might have. The final play of Caesar, Julius Caesar, took place last night in Central Park, and of course Trump plays Caesar, and they kill him in the end, and the play was disrupted by Trump protesters. pro-Trump protesters. Enough already. He's a polarizing figure. Sun, Uranus, Gemini, conjunction, true node in Gemini. That's what you're going to get. But these are very challenging times. Because we get triggered, right? There's so many triggers, disembodied triggers floating through the air like daggers, just waiting to attach to you, whether you're in traffic or maybe you're at the grocery store or maybe you're dealing with somebody with customer service on the phone, or you know what I mean? There are these pieces of hardcore, jagged stimuli, triggers, just waiting. And in those moments, it's very possible in those moments to experience a form of possession, that you become dispossessed of your composure, you become dispossessed of your clarity, dispossessed of your ability to respond versus react, and the next thing you know, something that's been stored up inside of you, something that's inserted itself into your behavior mode in that moment, comes alive, and boom, we've got more discord, more anger, more strife. So we have to be very careful during these times. Now, that's not to say we sit around cross-legged and cross-eyed all day and hope and pray for inner peace, and that's not a bad thing to do. Don't get me wrong. If you meditate, whatever form of meditation you do, however you do it, whether it's gardening or running, vipassana, whatever, it's important to have that center. You got to have the center. And at the same time, we also have to be really aware and alert and cognizant of what the heck is going on around us. So, usually I wait to the end of the show to give you some positive stuff. And so right now I'm going to try to bring that positivity into what we're talking about today. And that is to be mindful. To be mindful in that moment. What are you going to do? Are you going to cut somebody off? Are you going to flip somebody the bird? Can you bless instead of damn? William Blake, one of William Blake's aphorisms, Proverbs of Hell, damn braces, bless relaxes. I'll repeat that. Damn braces, bless relaxes. Find the blessing point inside of yourself, for yourself and for other people, because Lord knows we need it in this world today. Now I'm going to get into a few topics here that are one of which is kind of silly, but it's worth talking about because it represents another form of oppression, what I would call soft oppression. And you Canadians, I love you. I love you Canadians. You're some of my favorite people, some of my best clients. We've got a bond, Canada, me and you. I know this for a fact. But your Prime Minister he's a piece of work, and not really a substantial piece of work. Let me read this to you. This is from 2 days ago, actually 5 days ago. So this was on Thursday of last week. And Canada, this is by Rob Shimshock, Canada passed a law Thursday making it illegal to use the wrong gender pronouns. Guess what, Canada? If you screw up your gender pronouns, you're screwed. You're doing time. Can you imagine that? Some guys in prison. He's sitting there with the hardened offenders. The people who are dangerous, scarred, wounded. They're sitting around the dining room. Bald-headed guy with tattoos all over his face. Gets into a stare down with you. So what are you in for? Sheepishly, you say, I misused a gender pronoun in a public setting. Your time is done. You're done. You're done in that prison. Oh my God. Welcome to mind crime. The most surreal version of mind crime. Critics say the Canadians who do not subscribe to progressive gender theory could be accused of hate crimes. Hate crimes. So listen, Canada is while it's not quite Europe, like in Europe, you cannot even remotely think about questioning anything about the Holocaust. You can't go there. It is a no-fly zone. And if you go there, guess what happens? You're going to jail. You can question anything about the Bible. And again, I'm not a born-again Christian. You can question anything about the Bible. I had no problem there. Jesus did not exist. He was an amalgamation of various sun gods. And Mary wasn't really Mary. She was a constellation. So it's all just poppycock and hooey. Let's just flush it and burn the Bible right here in front of everybody. And I'm not a born-again Christian. But that's not going to get you jail time in Europe. Questioning how many people died in the Holocaust, that'll get you jail time. Well, Canada's not that far behind. Canada's just a few dance steps behind that kind of real tyranny and oppression. So let's go here. Let's see what else. The vote was so unanimous, 67 to 11. The bill now only needs royal assent from the Governor General. Great news, announced Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister. Bill C-16 has passed the Senate, making it illegal to discriminate based on gender, identity, or expression. Hashtag love is love. Love is love. Love is love. Proud that Bill C-16 has passed the Senate, said Jody Wilson-Raybould, the county's Attorney General, Minister of Justice. All Canadians should feel hashtag free to be me. This is the ultimate form of self-idolatry. Free to be me. I can be anything I want. Instead of actually working your ass off to be theoretically free, right, and pushing against the social tide to be free, now all of a sudden all you got to do is just subscribe to this inane theory, and I'm sorry, it's an inane theory. There are kids in the United States in kindergarten that are going into therapy because they have some misguided sense about their gender. Can you imagine that? A lot of you are parents out there. Am I right? A lot of you are parents out there. Could you imagine when your kid was in kindergarten having to, and let's say the school mandates it. That'd be even worse. Oh, Mr. or Mrs. Miller, I'm sorry, but we feel as though Jonathan is having a hard time recognizing his gender. And in fact, we feel like it would be really important for him to explore gender-neutral therapy. Clearly, there was an incident yesterday where, we brought in some kittens just for the boys and the girls to, the children. These things are hard to break sometimes. The children were asked to play with the cats. Jonathan went for a gender-assigned female cat. And we think that that's a sign that perhaps Jonathan might be more on the female spectrum. So we really think it's important that you participate with Jonathan in some therapy, dysphoria therapy. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine having your 5-year-old in kindergarten go through some shit like that? It's happening. It's happening. And in Canada, man, good luck. Here's a little piece here. Of course, they've got There's an argument that transgender identity is too subjective a concept to be enshrined in law because it is defined as an individual's deeply felt internal experience of gender, said Grant Mitchell, a conservative senator, in November 2016. Yet we, of course, accept outright that no one can discriminate on the basis of religion, and that too is clearly very deeply subjective and personal feeling. Jordan Peterson, a professor at the University of Toronto and one of the bill's fiercest critics, spoke to the Senate before the vote, insisting that it infringed upon citizens' freedom of speech and institutes what he views as dubious gender ideology into law. Compelled speech has come to Canada, stated Peterson. We will seriously regret this. Ideologues are using unsuspecting and sometimes complicit members of the so-called transgender community to push their ideological vanguard forward, said the professor to the Senate in May. The very idea that calling someone on a term that they shouldn't choose causes them such irreparable harm that legal remedies should be sought. An indication just how deeply the culture of victimization has sunk into our society. So get that straight. The minute somebody screws up, there's going to be a lawsuit. And trust me, people are going to screw up. They will screw up. And there'll be a lawsuit, and somebody will be awarded a substantial amount of money because somebody didn't get their pronouns right. Good luck, Canada, on that one. Not great. Gavin McInnes should have a field day with this if he hasn't already. I can imagine, just like, you have people that gather together for like illicit drugs, crack dens, heroin, they call them shooting galleries. I can see people sort of gathering together, in a darkened room with maybe a few candles, a couple of cold beers, sitting around saying, she, he, her, him, boy, girl. And then the door breaks down. The road is bogged. Warning! It's not even a human. Warning! You're in violation of Bill C-16. You are now under arrest. May all the people in this room please get on your knees and put your hands behind your head. Ah, man. Anyway, good luck, Canada. This thing passed overwhelmingly, 67-11. I want to shift gears just slightly. And I'm going to bring up a story here. I know people have been telling me that I talk about sports too much. And they say, well, you should have your own sports show. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll have another show later in the day just dedicated to sports, whatever. But this is a sports story, and it's a disturbing story, and it's a story that brings up a lot of different elements. And I'm not going to weigh on this from a moral perspective, because this is a very difficult story to talk about. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because, in a strange way, it illustrates the despicable double standard that we're living with, and the hypocrisy, and even the cognitive dissonance. The story is about a pitcher for Oregon State University whose name is Luke Heimlich. And Oregon State is the best college baseball team in the country. They will probably win the College World Series. They are loaded and stocked with talent, and Luke Heimlich over the past season was one of their best players. He's a pitcher. He's a bit on the older side. He comes from Puyallup, Washington, was the high school state pitcher of the year when he was a senior in high school. He eventually moved on to Oregon State University, and as Oregon State was moving rapidly towards the College World Series with one of the best records in the history of college baseball, it was uncovered that Luke Heimlich is a registered sex offender. And he was not only accused of, but found guilty when he was 15 years old of having a 2-year relationship with a 6-year-old girl. That in and of itself is not great. Heimlich had better hope that he never does anything in his life again that lands him in prison, because we all know what happens in prison with sex offenders. It's a living hell for them, because pretty much everybody in prison has been offended sexually. I mean, let's be clear about that. It's a lot. And, so there's hell to pay. And it's the whole cycle of generational abuse is really probably one of the greatest crimes ever in humanity, where these things get played out again and again and again because this virus gets passed on to whoever is being violated. They don't know it, but that's what happens. And I'm not excusing it. I mean, it's a terrible thing. Lives are ruined constantly. There's right now, I guarantee you, there's a life being ruined right now as we're talking. I know it's heavy, but it's true. If you think about it, it's happening right now. And it may be happening a lot closer to you than you may realize in terms of geographical proximity. But Heimlich was probably like the first or second best pitcher on this team. And every year they have a draft and players get picked. He was slated to be a first-round pick. Well, that's worth millions of dollars, anywhere between $7 to $3.5 to $4 million. Signing bonus right there, slotted, guaranteed, no negotiation. This is what you get. He wasn't picked. And they've got 40 rounds. 40 rounds of the draft, and no major league team picked him. Now he's, I believe he's 23 right now, 23, 24. And this happened when he was 15, so we're talking about 10 years ago, and nothing has happened since then. But it was such a big deal that the team went to the College World Series and they left him home. And the dean at Oregon State mentioned that they look forward to supporting him in the future, that there was no sense that he would be back with the team next year. He's a junior, so he's slated to play another year. I doubt he plays again at Oregon State. And it's a really tragic situation. It's tragic for the 6-year-old girl who at this point in time is, 15, 10 years ago, so she's around 16, 17 years of age. Certainly tragic for her. Tragic for her parents. Tragic for Luke Heimlich's parents. And ultimately for Luke Heimlich himself. Now here's what I really wanted to bring up. Because here's somebody who was guilty, convicted of a crime, a registered sex offender. It's on the public record. And yet, we have all these very pernicious, dark, dirty, and horrific activities that are taking place in Hollywood, Washington, D.C., New York City, college campuses across the country. And we live in a society and a culture of enablers. And they get away with it every single day. And in fact, not only do certain people get away with it, they're promoted because of it. For whatever reason, their participation, their procurement, whatever that is, they get promoted. And they are under the radar, and they are not getting any attention. No burn. And here's this young guy who made an absolutely terrible, terrible series of choices and decisions. And who knows what motivated him? Who knows what's in his past? I'm not excusing it. He was 15 years old. And he's going to be branded for life. He may never play professional baseball. He may never get to a point where he could even work Oh, you're Luke Heimlich. That's not, Luke Heimlich, that's a pretty unusual name. The Heimlich maneuver. Oh, you're Luke Heimlich. I'm sorry, we're not hiring. This guy's branded. It's very, very, very intense. And I don't have an answer to this. I'm not saying give the guy a second chance, but theoretically, we live in a society. We live in a society where if somebody does something, right? If somebody does something, and Michael Vick is, I think, one of the greatest, again, sports analogy, one of the greatest examples of this. And I got to just tip my cap to Michael Vick. You want to talk about somebody who turned things around in such a genuine kind of way that it really resonates with this whole power of redemption and second chances. Michael Vick basically ran a dogfighting ring. He had a dogfighting little stadium in his dogfighting rink in his house, and they bred dogs to fight. It was a sport. They bet on it, and it was part of Michael Vick's upbringing, and it was very sophisticated, and it was incredibly cruel. Michael Vick theoretically was a byproduct of his environment. Michael Vick did prison time. He did about 2 years worth of prison. His career was interrupted. Mike had some other issues going on at the time too. He got caught carrying a gun. Michael Vick was getting ready to just go off road here. Did his prison time. He came back, and he's become one of the most powerful advocates for animals, dogs. He does stuff for the SPCA. He has done such a 180. And again, hats off to Michael Vick. He's an Aries, by the way. He had a second chance. And when you do things to animals, it's almost, in our society, it's almost worse than doing things to kids or people in general. Kids are very close. Very, very close. Maybe a little bit above animals. Okay? But animals have, this kind of sacred place in our society. Anyway, I don't have an answer for Luke Heimlich. I don't know what the right thing to do is. I do know that he was 15 years old. I don't know if he's gone into counseling and therapy, but if he has, and he's shown significant amounts of, I wouldn't necessarily say remorse, but understanding and adaptive behavior, then that person needs to come out. Whoever the therapist is, they need to come out and say, hey, look, I've been working with this guy for the last 6 or 7 years, and clearly he's changed guy or whatever, right? I think it's really sad. And he's having to pay for something from his past. And this is what happens with life sometimes. And again, I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I do know this. In the climate that we're in, and you just look at somebody like Colin Kaepernick, who I doubt will ever play pro football again in this country. He may do it in Canada. But if I'm a major league franchise, I'm not touching Luke Heimlich. I think there's too much heat there for now. And it's sad because he's a really good athlete, good pitcher, and huge social stigma, and super, really unfortunate and tragic for everybody involved. I don't have an answer. But I just wanted to put this in the context of some of the other shit that goes on in our society with people who are far more powerful and far more famous, who indulge in activities that are either at the same level of indecency and perhaps even worse. I'll leave that for you to decide or talk about it. Put your comments over on Facebook and tell me what you think about it. Okay, so a little business at hand here. I don't do this very often, but I'm going to do it today. First of all, I'm going to talk about my astrological course. If you are interested in learning about astrology, I've got it on my website, and you can get there, check it out. It's a really, I think, a very decent bargain. It's a decent deal. There are other people who sell courses for $3,000. My course is way less expensive than that and offers a lot of quality. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do today. If you decide that you want to sign up for the course, which is 16 hours of video, and you're going to get labs, you're going to get PDFs, you're going to get a big package. You sign up for that, and if you do it and purchase it before Sunday, you will get a 1-hour reading. How about that? I will throw in a 1-hour reading, which is I charge $155 for my sessions. You sign up for the course, you get a 1-hour reading. You already get the natal report and a chart, so you're going to learn all about your sign. It's about a 25-page report, and you'll get your chart. And I'm going to throw in an hour reading, but you got to come and get the course. And the other thing, again, I don't do this often, but I'm at a point where it could be very helpful, very useful, that if you like these broadcasts and whatever I put up on my website, it would be great if you could throw a little donation in the kitty, because WROB could use a little fuel, let's put it that way, to keep this thing going. And I'm being, how should I say this, pretty even-keeled about it. So if you like what you hear and you want to support this and help me keep this moving forward, I humbly ask you to do that in any way, shape, or form you can. You can go to my website, robertphoenix.com, where I got a little PayPal button over there, and you can donate, and anything that you choose to bring to the table would be greatly, greatly appreciated. All right, so we've moved through quite a bit today. Some unusual and interesting topics, and not easy to talk about or deal with. And as always, it's important to bring some of this to light, just so that we can exercise it. With that, I wish you a great second day of summer, and use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'll be back 24 hours from now. This is Robert Phoenix, and you are you. Have a great day.
Okay, let's do it.